欢迎收看最新一期的子天访谈录 SD Talk Show， 我是子天 Skydo。Welcome to SD Talk Show. Hi, Danny. Thanks for joining me today again, be my co-host.
Of course. Hi, Sky. I'm very excited. We have a very special guest today.
Yeah. Today we have an Asian face with us, I think.
But an Asian American born, first Chinese American newly elected mayor in the city of Southside. How exciting.
Yeah.
Welcome, Mayor. Thank you for coming.
Please introduce yourself to our Southern News audience.
My name is Andy Chan. I am the current sitting newly elected mayor for the city of Southside Place, located adjacent to the city of West University Place, near Bel Air, and also being surrounded by the city of Houston.
Yes, can you do some introduction about your city?
So our city is quite a small enclave. We have a population of a little less than 2,100 people currently sitting there. We are approximately 157 acres. We have 11 named streets, and we have a small commercial strip along the Bel Air corridor.
Right.
So we're surrounded by the block-off streets of Auden and Edlow, University, and Bel Air. So.
And how long have you lived there?
I have lived there with my wife, Cynthia, and our family for a little over 17 years now.
17 years, yeah.
17 years. The city may be a little bit small, but it's really unique.
It is unique in the sense that it's maintained its own unique identity. It is a type A city, which means we're less than 5,000 people total. But we have our own full-time fire department, and which is run by volunteers. So it's not a paid position except for the chief. And then we have a full-time public works department where we maintain our own sewer and also our own emergency water system, and a full-time police staff along with a city hall.
Right. What has made you decide to go into politics? I know that you have served as city council for several years.
So it's interesting. Most people think of politics, being partisan and so forth. I didn't look at it that way. It's more of a extension of my service that I've done. I've been involved with HISD, the Houston Independent School District, for a little more than 18 years, and I've always served on committees, going back as many as 5 superintendents now. I worked originally with Diane Johnson, who is the trustee for District 5, Mike Lunsford, the current sitting Sue Dygard. I've worked with her and continue to represent our community. In fact, I still sit on the West University Elementary School, SCMC, which is the Shared Decision-Making Committee, as a community leader there. I've been a 3-time PTO president for HISD, so I've been an elementary school, middle, and high school PTO president. So continuing to serve was just a natural extension in our community. So I sat on city council for 6 years prior to running for mayor, and I was mayor pro tem 5 of those years. So.
Right.
Many years of experience. So what's your 3 priority being mayor?
So 3 priorities one is always going to be public safety, is to be able to maintain and increase that presence within the community. The police department's done an excellent job about keeping up with technology, but also the constant patrols around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
We have maintained one of the lowest crime rates within those adjacent sistering cities with us. Also, our fire department, as I mentioned before, is a full-time volunteer fire department where we do have an active paid chief who continues to do excellent work. And we maintain a 1 rating nationally among volunteer fire departments, which lowers everyone's insurance rates for fire in our city, which we're very proud of too as well. And then my second priority is infrastructure. So the main priorities right now in terms of infrastructure is flood mitigation. As everyone knows here, we have flash floods constantly, and streets flood quite readily. We want to move to what they call as a standard municipal standard of 2 years, which means a flood event every 2 years will be able to push down the watershed and exit out of the streets without flooding. We currently are not at that. So the 3 major projects that we are looking at one is Poor Farm Ditch, which is a 66-year-old flood ditch which borders the city of West University Place and city of Southside. has been on the books for almost 22 to 23 years to be replaced. So we're working with Harris County Flood Control. We're working with the county commissioner as well in order to secure funds and finalize up planning and actual construction eventually on that. The other projects that we are working on as a city individually are what we call the Edlow Harper project and then the Auden project. So those are the main things. We're proud of our infrastructure investment. When the city of Houston, actually most of Texas, froze back in February, we were one of the only cities within this local area that were able to maintain fresh water going to their citizens because we invested on our well system and our backup generator. So while some people did not have fresh water or had to go on boil notice, we were able to maintain constant pressure and fresh water to our citizens.
Right.
The third priority that we're looking at is always building community. Southside's been called basically the Mayberry of a living Mayberry. And we're very proud of the fact that we're all neighbors and friends, and we continue to have a very robust volunteer system within the city, whether it be the park system or whether it's the summer camps and so forth. We maintain that feel that we're still a small community, and we're proud of it.
Yeah. Well, what is the demographic in South Side Place?
So demographic.
Asian population.
Yeah. So we're of that 21 something, a little 2,000 people. We have almost 18% Asian population, which is
18%.
Which is
really high.
Which is quite high.
Yeah.
And that probably has a lot to do with our vicinity close to the medical center and Rice University.
Yeah.
Some are, of course, involved in oil and gas, which is, of course, predominant here within Houston. But that probably has a lot to do with that fact.
Right. Unlike in the Bel Air area, you see a lot of small business owners, entrepreneurs. But when you think about Asian population, you think about Sugar Land and some other city. So did you get a lot of support from the Asian American community?
I had actually a very large, overwhelming support by the community as a whole. I think my win had over 87% of the votes within
87%?
Correct. So I had close to 400 votes. I was told that this is one of the most well-attended elections, even compared to national elections.
Right.
And this was just a local municipal. So the community came up, and I couldn't be more appreciative of their support. But yes, I did have a large of that population. I couldn't tell you the exact percentage, but I knew multiple families coming out and vote.
Right. How many opponents did you have?
I had one opponent that was running against me, correct.
What did you find the most challenges in terms of running for your race?
I think as in any race that you do in terms of getting out is to get out people to vote. So I actually took the time to walk our neighborhood. I walked, in fact, 3 different times. It's only 11 blocks. It's a little over 400 single-family homes.
Knocking on doors?
I did a lot of door knocking and shaking of hands and meeting people that I'm ashamed to say I did not meet before, but proud to say that I can actually say I know them now. And that helped. I mean, I think high vote was roughly around 300, so it was quite a bit of an increase, less than 300 actually. And this time we had close to 400 votes out. So yeah, I was very proud of that fact.
Yeah, today we have 2 great Asian American leaders sitting with me. Danny is a former city councilman.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think audience more want to know your personal life because you have different background. Even you're born in New York. Can you talk about that?
So I was born in New York, specifically the Queensboro, Jackson Heights area. Yeah. I do remember as a child living near what they will call Flushing Meadow Park, and a lot of people will recognize that name because the World's Fair was located there, and also it's famous for having the U.S. Open in that area. But I remember it being a very small neighborhood. I had a person who took care of me during the daytime because both my parents worked or were finishing out school. And I mainly was actually brought up speaking Cantonese when I was younger. I wish I could say I remember as much as I used to.
Right.
You know, but I know enough that my grandparents aren't necessarily, while they were alive, weren't necessarily ashamed of the fact of communicating with me. So,
did your parents support you go into politics?
My parents have always supported the fact that I was involved in service. As I said before, I don't consider this directly in politics. I consider it as a service to the community.
Right.
And so my parents are very proud of that fact, and they've always been very supportive of that. My sister's also, who lives here in Houston as well, is very involved in public service. She runs a foundation for pediatric brain cancer research. Unfortunately, we lost my niece when she was only 7 years old. And so it was a very rare form of cancer, which is called DIPG. And we together, we formed a foundation in order to raise awareness and raise funds for that. And she's very involved in that. And she continues to be involved in pediatric brain cancer research. So, and my parents are always encouraging us to always, you know, give back, you know, because we've been blessed, you know.
Right.
I heard about you already retired.
You're too young, right?
Yeah.
He just graduated from college. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I did retire, and a lot of that was a decision that we made as a family.
Yeah.
My wife, Cynthia Wu, who's a radiologist, and we've been blessed to have her really take care of the family. But it was a decision made because I was working. I've been told I was working too much, and the story happened where I was. My daughter was roughly about 5 years old, and she was supposed to go to see Santa in the village, which is over there in the Rice University Village. And I was supposed to take her that night, but I got caught up at work. And so my wife took her. And then when I came home, she was already in bed. And I went up to go give her a kiss and say our prayer together. And I asked her, well, how was seeing Santa? And she said, it was okay. And then I went down to go put my food in the microwave and sat down with my wife. And she told me that, you know, the kids really had a good time, but the reality is, you know, they didn't tell you that because they didn't want you to be sad or upset that you missed out on it. And so it was a decision then. Our nanny got sick and everything, and I made the decision at that point to sell my business and just to get involved in my children's education and start putting more time in the community and into their public school system and volunteering there. So yes, so I did. I sold my businesses and then decided to put my energy toward public service and toward my family. So it was a pretty easy decision after that.
Yeah. After you're retired, what's your future? Maybe 5 years, 10 years, the blueprint plan?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay. So currently I plan to continue to serve the city of Southside Place until a lot of those goals are met, especially in terms of infrastructure. Prior to me even being on council, I was involved in a lot of those type of meetings in the past. So I'd like to be able to see that through. I don't think there's a goal that I haven't accomplished that I haven't been able to maintain once I've decided to do it. So I will be pretty resilient in moving forward in my public service for that. I don't see any foreseeable future of moving vertically up in any sort of politics in that sense. I really like what I'm doing currently at this point. As far as our family, both our children are actually in college right now. One is a senior at Texas A&M College Station, and her goal is eventually to move on to a graduate program and perhaps even medical school is what she's told us. And then our son is currently at Texas A&M Corpus Christi pursuing an environmental science or meteorology degree. We don't know yet. So we'll find out. But kind of moving forward, we also have a home in Wyoming that we've been working on for a number of years. Built back in the early 80s, and so we've been working on that. And I don't know, my wife and I would actually like to be able, once COVID ends, to actually start traveling maybe, but we'll see, you know.
Let me shift gear a little bit. What is your observation or evaluation of the small business community of Asian American in the Houston region? Like a strength, weaknesses, opportunity, like a SWOT analysis.
So if I was looking at it, I think some of the strengths is always going to be community, right? The Asian community is very tight knit. I would like to see in terms of that, though, to be able to increase and then cross over. A lot of the business, as you've seen over the number of years, originally, of course, as everyone knows, we started off in downtown and just those 3 or 4 blocks that are over there by the freeway, 59, and now we've increased, of course, to Bel Air over the last 25 years. It'd be nice to see that more people step up and do what you're doing, taking chances, doing developments, being able to taking capital and then leveraging it to move forward and doing that. There's always opportunities if you look for them and you work hard for them. So, yeah. And then some of the threats, if you're looking at the threats within the community, is also perhaps the fact that strength is that being so close-knit. Sometimes is that you can get a little bit too close-knit, right? So if you're talking about a SWOT analysis, I'd say one of the threats is internally imploding upon itself without looking, and then going or reaching outside, crossing the aisle, so to speak.
So what you're saying, you encourage a small boat from a river to get into the big ocean, right?
Yeah, but as you do that,
possibilities, right?
Right. Well, and when you start moving that direction, you have to build the infrastructure or to develop those relationships to build that bigger boat.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot of preparation. People said luck is when preparation meet opportunity. You think the closest, the closeness of the community, but you have to learn the language. You have to be a part of the mainstream culture. You have to be part of American. Have you ever faced what they call identity crisis? You were born over here. I mean, you don't have to answer that if you think it's too sensitive. But you were born. So who are you? Are you really Chinese, or are you American or Chinese American? And
I can say that I'm an American, and I'm very proud of my Asian heritage. I mean, my parents have never let me forget that. Like, I never miss having dinner with them in that sense. When asked to go out to, and especially for Chinese New Year's, that's a big thing that's still very well observed. I mean, even for our wedding with my wife Cindy, I still had to go.
By the way, my beautiful wife is sitting in the studio, who is very supportive of the man.
I had to do a tea ceremony, which is very unlike what would be expected today. So I still had to practice that as well. So we tried to tell our children about that and still instill the fact that when we talk about this is the close-knit part of the community and maintaining the fact that family takes care of family, right? So my parents are still alive and blessed in that sense, and they live here in Houston. And so a lot of the business acclimate that I have comes from my parents. I mean, my father came with Shell Oil Company down when they first moved into Shell 1, Shell 2, and when Royal Dutch bought out the stocks, the U.S. stocks, he took the golden parachute and he started businesses. So I learned by example in that sense that my mother and father both were willing to do that, right? Even though they had never done that, they had never taken classes to do that. They did go out and then make a run at businesses. And then my mother later took her public health degree and then actually was working in the city of Houston during the AIDS crisis in the public health department over there too as well. So,
the first generation came in and they become very successful. So it has a lot to do with how they value the opportunity. So coming from a country where there's a big lack of opportunities, then they come here and then they work hard. Do you think the second generation who was born in America, they have a lot of advantages? Do you think that our children, your children and my children and our children, do you think they can maintain that work ethics?
It's funny you say that because that's something that my wife and I ask ourselves. We wanted to try to, you share the blessings that you've had the opportunity to get, right? So they've lived definitely in a much more affluent way than we ever did when we were growing up. We remind them, though, of the fact that even though they have these opportunities, it's a waste if you don't take advantage of them to move yourself forward. I think it's every parent's want and dream to have their children succeed them in order to do better than them. At least that's what my parents always, taught me and said to me as well. That's what my wife's parents said to her. And so there is something to be said about having too much, having too many blessings in one sense is not necessarily good. Rudy T, the coach for the Rockets, always said he wanted his players to be hungry, right? Even though they won a championship, he wanted them to maintain that hunger, kind of moving forward. So I think it's a very fine balance. But yeah, I think there's a little fear that the affluence might affect their hunger to be able to go out and to really go out and grasp what they need to grasp, right?
Right.
So.
Is there anything else before we conclude?
Yeah, thanks for your time. I think audience really interested all your story.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'd like to congratulate you, Mayor.
Thank you.
By the way, since you don't have a big population in the city, is that a full-time demanding job or?
It's as much time as you want to put into it. So it is a volunteer position.
Right.
There is a ceremonial, I think it's $1 per year ceremonial. No mayor has ever taken the $1,
Right.
but it's ceremonial. So I do spend time in doing it and doing research. I work very closely with staff and my city manager in order to maintain on top of different opportunities for networking or to actually do research in these different areas, especially those areas of priority. I've kind of prided myself on every service opportunity I have to have knowledge and having some background information before approaching a situation. So.
Okay, last question, I promise. If there's one question that someone asks you, what is it that you are proudest of being an American, what would you say? One thing.
What is the proudest thing as an American?
Asian American.
Asian American. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We are American. Asian American.
Asian Americans. I will say that my proudest thing is in regards to heritage is being with my family, but also the fact that I've been able to serve. Yeah. Hopefully this will be an example for other Asian Americans to come out and to actually step out of that safety net, so to speak. I think a lot of times there's this notion that Asian Americans are too quiet and too meek, but I'm telling you, as long as you have a heart for it, you can go out and serve, and you can make an impact in your community. So I would encourage it.
Yeah, you are an inspiration, man.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yep, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Also, I want to know this question too, Danny.
Yes.
What's your most proud to be Asian American?
Yes, it's pretty much like the mayor. We are very proud because we came and we value this country, and we become an asset. We contribute. We're not a liability. The mayor become an asset. He contribute his time to solve the city problems. So I'm very proud to be an American. Yeah, we're grateful, and we treasure our heritage.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, Sky, we keep the best of both worlds. Whatever best, we keep it, and we make the best out of it. That's why it's called Asian American.
I like you talk the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for your time, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Hopefully see you next time.
Okay, thank you.
这就是今天的子天访谈录，我是子天 Sky 的，我们下期再见。